Shalom. I'm Rabbi Josh Caruso of Anshe Chesed Fairmount Temple, and I know Shelley's family is honored that you are here today. I'm here representing the temple to which Fern and Shelley belong, but for sure there's many ripples out in the community, particularly for Shalom and Elise, the communities they belong to. And we're speaking of the Mandel Jewish Day School, and of course we're speaking of B'nai Shurun, who its clergy are here today, and we are speaking of Sharei Tikva as well. It only speaks to the kind of community people they are, that we have this wonderful group here representing the many streams of our community here today. In the words of Ecclesiastes, a season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for dancing, a time for wailing, a time for birthing and a time for dying, a time for speaking and a time for silence, a time for seeking and a time for losing. The time of mourning is a complicated time filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. We begin our service with the recitation of psalms and prayers, thus linking Shelley's life with the 3,000-year-old tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. I invite you to join with me now in the recitation of Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Every year on Passover, we engage in the mitzvah of drinking the 4 cups of wine or grape juice. This mitzvah is one of the most recognized of the many rituals and customs at the Seder table. 4 cups may sound like a lot of wine, but what makes the mitzvah all the more powerful is what's inside of those cups. That we are obligated to drink rov kos, to drink the majority of the wine in the cup. There is no other Jewish occasion when we are commanded to drink rov kos, the majority of that wine in the cup. We're commanded to drink so much. Not even Shabbat are we commanded to drink that level of wine. Why? Because these 4 cups represent God's saving power and the notion of freedom that is sacred to our lives. We may drink wine on Shabbat to honor God's saving power, but on Passover, the obligation is to take it further, to consider each one of the 4 cups a distinct mitzvah, a distinct sacred obligation, to remember and acknowledge with each filled cup of wine the blessings and the freedom that we were given. To remember that there is a saving power in this world. Today, our metaphorical cups are both filled with great joy and with sadness as we remember our dear Sheldon Braverman. Shelley filled all of our cups with his sweetness, the richness with which he lived his life, fullness of gratitude for what he brought to this world. He had a kind of power. He had a kind of saving power that redeemed us, that redeemed this world, that made us feel like everything was going to be okay because he was in it. He was in it. He was part of life. He did not unplug. He did not detach. He did not say whatever. This was a man who engaged. His cup was filled with opportunity. He was kind. He was giving, he was loving, he was smart, he was compassionate, he was curious, he was for sure civic-minded, and much, much more. we think about this wonderful man, as we hear from people in our community who are going to pay tribute to him. I'd like to invite Rabbi Scott Rowland to share a few words, a few remarks, before we invite family members and friends to share a few themselves.
Kirachem av al banim, rachem Adonai al yirei av. As a father has compassion for his children, God has compassion for those who show reverence. God knows how we are fashioned. God remembers that we are dust. The days of mortals are like grass. We flourish as the flowers of the field. A wind passes over them and they are no more, and no one can recognize where they grew. But Adonai's compassion is everlasting, God's kindness to children's children, to all the reverent ones, endures age after age, unchanging. So I had the opportunity to greet Shelley's loved ones when I walked in earlier this afternoon. We commented that the last time we gathered together was to celebrate Hannah's becoming a bat mitzvah. I'm willing to guess that Sheldon's last aliyah was up on the bima, surrounded by community, surrounded by friends, surrounded by grandchildren, surrounded by so many loved ones, standing before the Torah. So incredibly proud of you, Hannah. So incredibly proud of all of you, the entire family that had come together to celebrate. I want us to hold that memory, and may he continue to have many, many aliyot. May his blessed neshama, his soul, continue to arise. May we be so blessed that as he ascends, the memories grow richer, grow deeper, and the space that we hold for him in our hearts remains there and endures forever and ever.
We'd like to invite Shelley's daughter, Elise, to share some words, followed by two of Shelley's grandchildren, and then followed by a family, friend, and colleague.
Three weeks ago, my sister, my mom, and myself made the most difficult decision of our lives. 3 weeks ago, we brought our father home on a hospice care. 23 years ago, our dad, was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, a horrible disease that we wish on no one. 23 years later, our dad came home. It was a horrible day, and it's been a very long 3 weeks. Though in retrospect, it did give our family time together, a time that we don't normally get to spend with one another, either because of geography or the hecticness of our busy lives. Our dad, Sheldon L. Braverman, he was an attorney, a lover of history, particularly Jewish history. He liked to run. When we were young, he would come home all sweaty and disgusting, and he would run after us to give each, Amy and myself, a hug. We ran the other way. That was probably the last time I ever ran. He really, really liked to take classes at Siegel College. We used to call it the Cleveland College of Jewish Studies. And in fact, one of his professors once told me that our dad was so good at taking classes. He would do all of his reading. He would come prepared to all of the classes that if only he would have written the papers, he would have achieved more than one master's degree. But more than anything else, our dad loved his family. He was always there for us. No matter what my sister and I wanted to do, swim team, debate team, hike for a semester on Outward Bound, that was not me, study in Israel for a year or two, build a house on the land, have an outdoor wedding with a reggae band, study for our graduate degree in New York. No matter what we wanted to do, our father's love and support never wavered. He was always there as our backbone. He might ask questions, offer advice, and even sometimes lecture at the dinner table about the numerous depositions that happened that day for his clients. Yet we always knew that we were the center of his universe. When Paul and Shalom came along, and Maya and Hannah and Ethan, and finally Eliana were added to the circle of our family, his love grew even larger. He really lived for his family, and especially his grandchildren. Every phone call to Amy and I always ended, "Now you take care of those kids." No matter what his physical limitations were later in life because of Parkinson's, he always came to visit us when we lived out of town. He met Amy and her family in Columbus, and he even went on vacations with us to Cedar Point, to Niagara Falls, to Jamaica, and even Disney. Amy and I learned countless lessons from our father's quiet strength. Be truthful and honest. Persevere. Support your children no matter what they want to do. But one of the greatest lessons that I think he taught us is to explore the world in which we live. Our family really liked to go on vacations. Because of his involvement in the American Trial Lawyers Association, we would take a family vacation to a different part of the country, and sometimes out of the country, every year. Now, we were not campers. My mother's idea of camping is a Holiday Inn. And we did not like to go sit on the beach. We were not sitters. Rather, we were an exploring kind of a family. We were doers. Long before the internet, with the help of AAA, many, many brochures picked up in rest stops, and a love of history, we would explore. Both Amy and myself are better people because of our early travels, and both of us have instilled this love of travel and exploration to our children, and this is a lasting legacy to our dad. Though I'm sure my dad had other regrets, the one great regret of his life was that he never got to explore Italy. To me, this is a constant reminder that no matter how busy we are, no matter how much we have yet to accomplish, figure out what it is you desire, what's in your heart, and don't push it off. There's a Mishnah that I've been thinking about for the past couple weeks. It's from Berkowitz-Kumin-Bookatz, and I think it's from the first chapter, but there's enough rabbis here so they could probably correct me. It says something like this. Yehoshua said, "Make for yourself a Rav, acquire for yourself a friend, and judge every person favorably," or on the positive side. Our dad was one of the least judgmental people that we know. He represented all his clients to the absolute best of his ability. He was well respected by his colleagues and community. But the part of the Mishnah that really stands out for me is the first part. Make for yourself a Rav, usually translated as a rabbi, but it's much better translated a teacher. Our dad was definitely our teacher. Amy and I didn't think that we were actually following in his footsteps. Neither of us are attorneys, and neither of us particularly like to read long books on American history. But it turns out we were wrong. It is his quiet lessons, his morals and values, and love that are his greatest teachings, and that is the greatest testimony that anyone can give.
Our grandfather was one of the strongest people we knew. This was demonstrated in his commitment to serving his community, fighting for social justice and equity, and taking care of his family. But his tenacity could best be seen by the way he fought Parkinson's disease for 23 years. My favorite memories of him share common threads. They all hold his generosity, love, and passion for learning. He sent me books about classic Americana figures, like Mark Twain, Abraham Lincoln, and stories of the nation from its birth to the present. I have a picture hanging on my dorm room wall of us reading Lynn Cheney's America, a Patriotic Primer. I can distinctly remember sitting with him after Thanksgiving dinner, reading this book, and feeling an incredible sense of potential and possibility that the pages gave off. This was my first memory of feeling intellectual curiosity. He took me to the Maltz Museum several times, where we sat and mourned and celebrated our history, where I realized that he lived in an America that did not always accept him because of his ethnicity. He may not have realized this, but he empowered me to be proud of my heritage. I still have a Star of David pendant that he bought me for a gift, bought for me after one of our visits. He saw me admiring it through the glass, and without asking me, he told the sales lady to take it out, because that's the kind of person he was. He was just always so generous. He supported my decision to go to boarding school because he knew that education provides the way to live an inspired and fulfilling life. And my grandpa truly lived an inspired life. He imparted upon me a love for ventures of the mind and showed me that with enough determination, almost anything is possible. I know that whatever I choose to pursue, he will inspire me to go beyond the perceived limitations that I have of myself. Because while he was unable to control the things that happened to him, he managed to continually challenge what his family and friends thought he was capable of.
Some of the most distinct memories that stick out to me were all centered around unity. Grandpa was all around a man who thrived off of teamwork and collaboration. He always was there to lend a hand and to provide any necessary support to us. Grandpa was also always willing to let us take the lead and provide assistance to him. This past winter, we took a family trip to an art studio where we painted our own renditions of Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. Despite physical challenges that may have stood in his way, Grandpa picked up a paintbrush and painted a picture depicting stars and trees and houses, all while we stood by his side supporting him. It was a joint effort, but I am sure that Grandpa was very proud of the work that he accomplished that day. A little while back, I read in an article that many people benefit from having a pet, such as a dog, a cat, or a fish, because it can provide them with a sense of responsibility. This is when I invented physical therapy using fish. I bought Grandpa a blue betta fish to care for and to keep him company. Grandpa and Grandma would give this fish a few little pellets of fish food every day and would show Bluey the betta fish that they cared by watching him swim around in his little tank for hours on end. Grandpa was so kind and considerate and really took care of everyone, including all fish, that he came in contact with. One quote that embodies Grandpa beautifully is V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. This quote translates to, love your neighbor as thyself. Grandpa definitely put others first and treated them the way that he wanted to be treated. Grandpa was kind, loving, and above all caring. Grandpa was also dedicated to education, not only the education of his kids and grandkids, but also the education of his community. Grandpa would spend countless hours teaching others in the Cleveland community about Jewish and American history, as well as teaching lessons on law and how to generally become a better person. He'd spend many Sundays teaching me all about current events and politics, followed up by a conversation about my schoolwork and a newly found shared interest for writing. One of my favorite memories was when Grandpa and I went on a special date together to a new restaurant that I wanted to try. Nobody else wanted to take on the challenge of taking me to a new restaurant and hoping that I'd find something to eat, except for Grandpa. He was always open to new experiences and trying new things, and we ended up having a great time together, and I enjoy looking back on that.
Neither of us knew our grandfather without Parkinson's. While he would not want to be remembered by the disease that he had, our memories of him are marred by his pains and struggles. But our memories are also marked by his uncommon strength and refusal to give up. He rejected the notion that Parkinson's could define him. He never was Parkinson's. Rather, it was something that he actively battled until the end. We will both be forever grateful for the strength and wisdom that he embodied and the enduring impact that he will continue to have on our lives.
I'm Tom Wagner. I am a former law partner of Shelley, and I've known him for 30 plus years. About a year and a half ago, I took Shelley to lunch, and he told me he had a surprise. Guess what I'm doing now? I'm taking boxing lessons. Here's a 75-year-old little Jewish guy racked by Parkinson's, taking boxing lessons. And I'll tell you why I wasn't surprised after I tell you another story or two about Shelley. Before everything went digital, Ohio attorneys every week would receive a little printed booklet in the mail with the latest Ohio decisions printed of any significance. So these would include Ohio Supreme Court decisions, they would include appellate decisions, common pleas, and even some interesting municipal court decisions. Now, Sheldon Braverman practiced law for nearly 40 years. That's 52 of these booklets. Call it 50 because I think they skip some holidays. 50 booklets a year for 40 years. I'll let his grandchildren do the math. Now, like every other attorney that I know, I would get my OBARs, that's what they were called. I'd look over, I'd scan the index. I'd maybe read a decision or two that was relevant, and then I'd recycle it. And even so, there was always about a 6-inch stack of OBARs on my desk. Not so with Shelley. He apparently kept them all at home, piled in corners all around. Fern finally put the hammer down and said, "Shelley, you got to find a place for this." And they disappeared. Until the next time that Fern pulled open his sock and underwear drawers, and he found them, and she found them filled with OBARs, not socks and underwear. But that didn't surprise me either. The truth is that Sheldon Braverman loved the law. He respected the law. And the OBARs were, I believe, in a very real sense, the law. And I'm not Jewish, but I think at some level, saving the OBARs, having them near him, was like protecting the Torah for Shelley. Shelley respected and he defended the law at a level that was and is very exceptional, even among attorneys. Shelley considered being a lawyer a profession, not a business. He was as devoted to his clients as he was to the law. He was a lawyer's lawyer. He was not a rainmaker. In an age of cynicism, where the respect for the rule of law and devotion to somebody else, in this case your client, the concept of being devoted to your client's best interest are being trumped by a selfish pursuit of money and power, Shelley was a throwback, an exception, a stubborn exception to the norm. And he could be stubborn. He could, in fact, be a pain in the tuchus. Do I have that word right? When it came to respect for the law, or his client's interests, or the truth. Believe me, I was only one of his law partners for a couple of years. Ask Fern. Let me leave you with a final story. Shelley joined Howard Metzenbaum's firm right out of law school. He became a partner quickly, and he was well established there when I joined the firm in 1984. About 10 years after that, the firm merged with another law firm, which proved not to be a good marriage. And as part of that process, Shelley was let go. It was a cruel and frankly stupid decision. The new management claimed that Shelley had to go because he could no longer try cases. What Sheldon Braverman did in response to that insult has forever been at the top of the list of my list of heroic law stories. Shelley did not blink. He left the only firm that he had ever known. He set that Braverman jaw and he moved his practice, I should say his profession, to the Rockefeller Building. And there he proceeded to prove his detractors wrong, 100% wrong. In the years that followed, Sheldon Braverman personally tried more cases in courts than any of his chest-thumping detractors ever did in their entire careers. And he made a very decent living at it. And by the way, his old firm eventually broke up and was dissolved. And did I tell you about the marathons that he ran? Or the fact that he was elected president of the Ohio Academy of Trial Lawyers? Or the fact that he was elected president of the Cleveland City Club, the citadel of free speech? That is why I was not in the least bit surprised when he told me he was taking boxing lessons. God bless you, Shelley.
Indeed, it seems like everything that Shelley did, he did with a full and whole heart. His activity in the world was overflowing with intention, with thoughtfulness, exemplified, of course, with his membership and presidency of so many organizations, including, yes, the City Club. Great to have you with us, Dan Moulthrop, its executive director. You pay tribute to him today. As Fern put it, Shelley was a joiner, meaning that he had his head and his heart in the world, always looking to contribute to the project of citizenship in his chosen community. As such, Shelley volunteered at Sherry Park, Judson Manor. He hosted discussions on current events, offered his take on the state of the world. He loved learning and cherished the opportunity for all to receive a quality education. Perhaps it comes as no surprise that Shelley married a sharp intellect like Fern and raised two beautiful girls, Elise and Amy, who went on to earn multiple degrees themselves, dedicating their lives to the education of others and their children. There was never a time when he would refuse supporting them in their pursuit of education. Indeed, Shelley was a student and enthusiast of presidential history. He even taught as an adjunct professor of history at Kent State. He was a staunch Democrat. Watching MSNBC was practically a religious exercise for Shelley, and he was exceedingly peeved when the TV in the hospital was set on default to Fox News. He loathed dishonesty from public officials. In fact, at the time of the Watergate crisis, he was one day caught speeding. In a transparent effort to convey his intentions to the police officer who pulled him over, he proclaimed, "Enough lying in this country. Yes, I was speeding." Incredibly, as a reward for his honesty, the cop let Shelley go without a ticket. Indeed, Shelley was an honest person through and through. As a workers' comp and personal injury attorney, he worked for the little guy, treating everyone equally, fairly. These qualities are certainly just some of the aspects of Shelley that drew Fern to him. While they both graduated from Heights High, it was not until their college days that they met. Fern's neighbor was looking to set up his friend Sheldon on a date, and Fern was tasked with going out with him as a favor to that friend. He said to Fern, "If I can't find anyone else, I'll fix you up with him. I'll fix you up with my neighbor." Their blind date, they went to see The Lord of the Flies, resulted in dinner at the Brown Derby, and Fern was intrigued enough by this nice guy that she went on a second date. That was to Lakeview Cemetery. Yes, that might sound odd, but it was just after JFK's assassination, and perhaps they went, well, maybe not perhaps, they went as a way of consoling themselves, visiting some of the presidential graves in the wake of our nation's shock at the death of its president. It was after that date, around Thanksgiving time, that Fern and Shelley knew, even before engagement, that there was something special between them. They were engaged for a year and married at Heights Temple in December of 1964. Fern and Shelley were a perfect match. Fern's temper could run hot, while Shelley was slow to anger, her words. And while Fern might self-admittedly rush to judgment, Shelley remained patient and took his time in discernment. In that incredible mix of personalities, they found in each other a beautiful companion, enjoying the rich discourse on the events of the day and life at large. They had a loving family, a close family. Speaking of Fern and Shelley's union, Cantor Sager shared these words with me just earlier today. She's sad that she couldn't be here with you, but she sends her love in these words. Their life together was a 53-year love affair, and we all came to know them as Fern and Shelley, no spaces. There was a unity of intention and purpose that inspired all who knew them and had the joy of knowing them. They were entirely unique and independent individuals, but they clearly drew great strength, courage, purpose, and comfort from each other as they walked side by side, hand in hand, for the greater part of their lives on this earth. Amy related to me that her dad simply adored Fern, and he expressed that adoration with regular gifts of appreciation. They were a gift to each other, respected each other's views and habits, proclivities. Shelley absolutely loved physical fitness, running both the Cleveland and New York City marathons. Fern joked that when Shelley was so vigorous and committed to his physical health, taking runs around the neighborhood, she would be at home smoking a cigarette. Even after the Parkinson's became a permanent part of his life, Shelley approached physical therapy at In Motion or wherever with great gusto and intention. His upper body remained strong to the very end, as he never gave up his fight. In the 23 years since Shelley was diagnosed with Parkinson's, he refused, as was mentioned earlier. He refused to let it define his life and bring him down. It never slowed down his mind. His caregiver, David, said that there wasn't a day that I didn't learn something from Shelley. He wanted to continue learning and growing and sometimes even joking. As Paul, his son-in-law, remarked, Shelley also sported a wonderfully sarcastic sense of humor. There were those drives when Shelley would intentionally miss the turns to the intended destination, saying, "Oops, I missed again," only to end up at the ice cream place. If you asked him for just a little bit of something he was eating, he'd break off a ridiculously tiny piece of that food as an offering. Shelley loved Las Vegas. No, not for the gambling, the drinking, or the smoking. He loved it for the lights and the shows. In fact, Shelley enjoyed entertainment in all forms, especially sports. Shelley was in his element when he would arrive to Municipal Stadium for opening day to see his tribe play. But he also was an original Cleveland Cavalier fan in the days before they even made their home at Richfield Arena. And whenever he and the girls would be in the car exiting the parking lot after an Indian or Cavs game, Shelley insisted on listening to the post-game radio feed all the way home, to Elise and Amy's chagrin. Today, we know just how many people Shelley touched in his life and the individuals who he cherished. While Shelley's sister Betty predeceased him, nothing could take away his love for her kids, Robbie, Randy, and Ellen, and their loved ones, their extended family. They were a part of him, his life. Of course, Shelley's grandchildren, Hannah, Eliana, Maya, and Ethan, they were his treasure. You were his joy. Their loving energy only enriched these past decades when he continued to battle the debilitating effects of his illness. It was just a couple of weeks ago when I sat by Shelley's bedside at home to share the good wishes from his Temple family and to offer the Vidui prayer, the confessional prayer on his behalf. As his beautiful family was gathered right next to him, we shared in the prayer of Shema Yisrael. He joined us in sharing these sacred words that have marked the final utterings of so many Jews of past ages. And that's how Shelley wanted it, to feel bound up in the bonds of eternal life with the ancestors of his faith tradition that he knew, that he respected. Those who he hadn't even met, but informed his life. He had a special appreciation for history, a special appreciation from where he came. In this respect, Cantor Sager also wanted to share these remarks. Shelley may have had his doubts and questions about God and some of the specifics of our faith, but he never questioned Jewish values, was a passionate defender of the vulnerable, the disadvantaged, the disenfranchised among us. His essential decency, sense of justice, moral clarity informed all of his actions and interactions in his work. His social advocacy, his volunteer engagement, his relationships with friends, family, clients, colleagues, even perfect strangers. With Shelley, it did not matter who you were or how he knew you. His attitude was the same. If you were a human being, you were sacred in his eyes. He may not have described his actions as divinely inspired, but they certainly were. Indeed. I echo Cantor Sager's remarks. Indeed, today our proverbial cups overfloweth with love, affection for this sweet and beautiful man. Every time I came into contact with him, it was genuine, he was earnest, he was sweet, he was smart, he wanted to engage. He loved this world, he loved those in it. These last 3 weeks were not only tough on Shelley, they were trying on his family. Fern carried this sacred burden with uncommon resilience. And Amy and Paul, Elise and Shalom, his beautiful grandchildren, you all sheltered him. You all sheltered him under your canopy of love and peace every day until the last minutes when he breathed his last. It was with that final exhale that we all lost a giant among us who never had the pretension to present himself as if he were. But we know better. We know he was a true giant. He was a model of what we should be. What was gained, though, is a legacy we all hold dear today. Zichrono livracha. May Shelley's memory forever be a blessing. Let us say, Amen. Let us pause for a moment as we consider his life. Now we'd like to invite Shelley's son-in-law, Rabbi Shalom Plotkin, will be chanting Amalei Rachamim. We'd like to invite also the clergy from Sharei Tikva, from B'nai Yeshurun, to join us up here today as we stand behind Shalom as he chants Amalei. Rabbi Stephen Weiss will be reading the translation. Jerry Isaac Shapiro, I think I saw you as well. Would you join us as a leader of Shelley's kids' school?
Amalei Rachamim, shochen b'amromim, amte mechone nechona, tachat kanfei hashchina, b'ma'alo kedoshim atorim, kezohar haraki amazirim, et nishmat, shochne ben Yisrael, Usimcha Leah, Shehalach leolamo, Began Eden tehei menuchato, Hanabal harachamim, Hasirehu besetir, Knafecha leolamim, Utzror, Bitzur hachayim et nishmato, Adonai hu nachlato, V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkafo, V'nomar Amen.
Exalted, compassionate God, we pray that you grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of our beloved Shelley, who has gone to his eternal home. O merciful one, we ask that he find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. May the Lord be his portion. May he rest in peace. And we say together, Amen.
Thank you. So we stand here with leaders of the community here. We all pay Shelley great tribute. We know how grateful his family is that everyone is here today. The family will receive friends after the graveside burial at Zion Memorial at 23457 Duffield Road, 23457 Duffield Road in Shaker Heights. They will be sitting today again after the graveside burial until 9 p.m., Tuesday and Wednesday from 1 to 3 and 7 to 9. Thursday from 7 to 9. There will be a Shiva Minyan on each one of these evenings starting tonight through Thursday night. Friends who wish may contribute to the Cleveland City Club, In Motion, Hospice of the Western Reserve, or Anshe Chesed, Fairmount Temple, to which he was a devoted member and usher and leader in our brotherhood, our men of Fairmount Temple. May his memory be a blessing. Amen.
All bears follow me, please. Just all bears.